Hello and welcome to the Fight Night Picks Recap Show. I'm John Franklin. This week on the show, we discuss all the fights from UFC Fight Night. Brunson versus Shahbazyan. They are back in Vegas at the Apex. Let's bring in, start this discussion, our man Cameron Romanik. All right, Cam, let's talk about this card from 3,000 feet, which we like to do at the top. This card had a lot taken away from it, and what was left was not a great card. I want to go through some of what we lost and then get your thoughts on what was left. So as I look on Tapology, you know that part where they have like the canceled and fizzled bouts.
Yeah.
I see Marcus Perez and Eric Spicely, gone. Holly Holm, Irene Aldana, gone. We lost Trevin Giles, night of the fight. Ed Herman, Ketlin Vieira and Yana Kunitskaya, gone. Vivian Araujo, gone, but Jennifer Maia still fought. Ray Bork, gone. Ed Herman and Gerald Mershart, gone. So I don't want to start this out in a negative way and act like the whole thing was just butchered and it just was doomed from the beginning. But it ended up being about 9 fights. The last card we got was 15. So how excited were you when it was all said and done? You sit down, it's about to be the first prelim. Did you still have any energy for it, or what? How were you feeling?
This kind of felt like a filler card. It felt kind of like jumbled together, like last minute kind of card. And especially when Mearshart pulled out, I thought him and Herman could have had a good fight. It was just overall disappointing. And then to have Holland and Giles be called off on top of that, it was just this added to it. I mean, but looking back on it, the card overall wasn't too bad. It was a short broadcast. It was very easy to get through. It wasn't like tiring like last weekend's. And yeah, overall, I think it was good. It was just disappointing. Like, just not as much fights, not as many good fights as I wanted to see.
You know, it's interesting that one of the things that the commentary team had picked up on, and Paul Felder in particular, was all the groin shots. And a little bit, it felt like the whole card was a groin shot from the beginning. Like, it was like, I think Felder counted 11. It's like 12 if you count all the fights that we lost. You know, he didn't count when Trevin Giles fell out. He didn't count that groin shot. And when Mershart, all these different fights we lost were kind of groin shots too. So, all right, let's talk about the main event. Ronda Rousey protege. I'm obligated to say that, Cameron, of course. Edmen Shahbazyan gets the big push, both in the intro and in the promotion. He came in at like a minus 360 favorite. Let's talk the fight, and then we can kind of get into all this too much too soon stuff. I want to get your thoughts because I have my own, but what do you think about the fight overall?
Brunson, I don't want to take credit away from Brunson, so I'm going to go about this crediting Brunson as much as I can. I think Brunson looked phenomenal. It was his best game plan I've seen. He weathered Edmen's early storm because he is a first-round finisher. He stood there. He struck well in the first round. And then once he implemented the grappling and the takedowns, it looked like it was just a whole nother level. The strength in the clinch and the strength on the ground was just impressive for Brunson. His athleticism really shone through. And on top of that, Edmen, it looked like his gas tank didn't hold up much at all. It looked like in that second round he was huffing and puffing. And he was the guy before the fight saying Brunson turned down the 5-round fight. He was saying Brunson was scared of the 5 rounds. Yet Edmen was the one who was tiring after 2 rounds, or after 1 round even. So yeah, I think Brunson, I don't think he's a title challenger, or I don't think he could challenge for the title, but he makes the division a lot more interesting with him kind of stepping up a notch as maybe like a top 5 gatekeeper.
Yeah, I like that he always kind of is the guy that can, he gets these hype trades or he gets guys trying to resurrect their career. That seems to be his MO, and this happens again. So here's my question that really was the takeaway for this. First, I'll start with this, and you can attack this if you want or not. But hot take, Shahbazyan might have been winning until the eye poke. We'll get to that later. A lot of people gave him that first round. That's a discussion for maybe later. So my question about the fight is, they seemed about even on the feet. Is Brunson's wrestling a problem for Shahbazyan, or is wrestling a problem for Shahbazyan? Do you think that he just needs to work on that aspect of his game? Or was Brunson doing something that you liked on his own?
I mean, Edmen isn't a slouch on the ground in the least. He has, I think he has a solid jiu-jitsu background, but when being taken down and wrestled, he's going to struggle. And I think Brunson's wrestling was a problem. And I think wrestling overall is going to be a problem because he's so high in the division already. If he was just a prospect coming up and he faces a good wrestler, and he'll have time to learn, but he's already at the top pretty much. He's already borderline top 10. So all the wrestlers he's going to face there are going to give him trouble. And yeah, I think that's something he's going to need to work on. Also, the cardio he's going to have to work on. The striking looked good. It just looked like he got maybe a little frustrated at times that he wasn't able to land as much as he wanted to on Brunson. He was throwing a lot of bombs, a lot of like winging shots. Both of them were, and Brunson was just able to get the takedowns, which won in the fight.
Well, I think one of the things that I took away from the fight was that you're right. I mean, and this may speak right to our next question, which is the too much too soon stuff. But if he were fighting prospects now, like he kind of is a prospect in a way. If he were fighting prospects, the fact that they may be wrestle heavy prospect would be sort of evened out by the fact that they're still trying to figure out their own striking. So guys that wrestle on Brunson's level that are still prospects don't strike on Brunson's level. So he doesn't have two problems he has to solve. He only has one. So now the guys like you're talking about that can wrestle at the level Shahbazyan's at, they can also strike. So he can't just overwhelm them with his striking. So then let's get to this this too much too soon stuff. A lot of people were comparing him to Rory McDonald. I don't see that because Rory seemed to me like he came in just much more polished. But
Rory's very well rounded. I think Edmen still has a ways to go.
So then, do you think that they're pushing him too much? Do you think that one of the things I said to Craig, we did early stoppage the other day, which if you're a huge early stoppage fan, it's coming out soon. I apologize because of me. But I said, do you think that Shahbazyan getting the title or the main event slot was a favor to Ronda Rousey? And Craig said, I think that the IG Live announcing the fight was a favor to Ronda Rousey, but I don't think the main event slot was. I don't know if I agree with that now, having seen the fight. The whole thing might have been a favor.
Yeah,
do you think Shahbazyan was ready for this fight?
I mean, I don't think so. I think it's really easy for the UFC to promote him just because he's like the golden boy, going for the youngest champion ever, like all this stuff. And then his wins. I mean, a lot of them by first round knockout were super impressive. The Tavares head kick. But then you look even deeper. You look at the Darren Stewart fight where he was grappled and he nearly lost. I mean, people could argue Darren Stewart beat him by decision. The judges didn't give it to Stewart, but you could see there were flaws there if you look deeper. But I personally did not expect Brunson to be as dominant as he was. And I think it was too soon. I think it was too much too soon. I think the UFC, and also they just booked the Sean O'Malley Marlon Vera fight as the co-main of UFC 252, which also could end up blowing up right in their faces.
You know, it's interesting. I think they put a lot of weight in the Tavares fight because what I believe, and no one's ever told me this, but this is what I believe, is that they try and use common opponents, not necessarily for MMA math, but to say, if he looked this way against this guy, the example being Brad Tavares. He head kick knocked out Brad Tavares, and I think Brad Tavares and Israel Adesanya went the distance. So if you're comparing those two, you say, well, if this kid can head kick knock him out, then you know he can at least hold his own against Brunson in the main event, right? Which he ultimately did not.
They did a similar thing with Gilbert Burns and Tyron Woodley. Burns like dropped Woodley, may had him bleeding, like busted him up on the feet. Well, Usman kind of controlled him against the fence. People are going to tend to like Burns' performance a little better just because of the violence involved, and that's how they're hyping up Burns for a title shot with Usman.
Yeah, and another thing it does is it makes it a lot easier to put the highlight packages together when you're promoting these fights. You know, if Shahbazyan beats Brunson and then ultimately fights Israel Adesanya, you show Brad Tavares clips of both, and then, you know, it kind of the storyline writes itself. So what's next? What's next for I'm with you. I don't want to take away from Derek Brunson, but at the same time, what's next for the Brunson? What's next for Shahbazyan?
Brunson and Hermanson should get booked now that Whitaker and Cannonier are fighting. I think Hermanson is left without a partner, and I think that should be Brunson. Or there's a wild card in there if Yoel Romero ends up coming back to fight again. Yoel Romero is going to be there. And for Shahbazyan, I'd like to see him go down, way down the rankings and fight someone way outside the top 15 and kind of just build himself back up. But the fight with Till kind of makes sense based on rankings, both coming off a loss. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to see Shahbazyan fight way down and maybe fight a wrestler and test himself. Even though, I mean, this is a hot take, but I think he would lose to a guy like Marvin Vettori. So yeah, I think Shahbazyan should take a step back, and the UFC should get him out of the top 15 or get him away from those killers at the top.
So if we talk about likely, probably, and should, right? The likely thing, I mean, do you see someone like Heinisch? Does that make any sense to you? Or is that too far down? Or is that what do you think about that?
Work maybe the winner of Weidman and Omari Akhmedov, or the loser, either one. Either one of those guys makes sense. Anywhere in that I guess like 10 to 20 range.
I think the Weidman fight makes a lot of sense because you get the name, but you don't really get the skills anymore. If we're believing that Weidman has lost a step or whatever, he's no longer deserving of being ranked at 85, then at least you get the name out of it. You accomplish what you're trying to accomplish fighting Darren Till, but you might have a lesser opponent in Weidman these days.
Also, Weidman's also a high level wrestler for 185.
Yeah,
and
true.
If he can take a punch and get some takedowns, he's going to be a serious problem for Shahbazyan.
All right, let's move on to the co-main event. Jennifer Maia defeated number 3 Joanne Calderwood by submission via armbar. Listen, Calderwood came in ranked 3rd, maybe looking to set up a title shot. She's had solid runs before that ended before she quite got to the promised land. I was surprised. I don't know if I was surprised by the fact that Maia won or how she won, that it was so quick. What did you think about this fight?
I think I was more surprised that Maia won. That was just surprising to me. I didn't see her really be able to get it to the ground. Even though Calderwood was the one who took it down, she kind of walked right into it. I mean, she was in Maia's guard, and Maia kept scooting back and getting her legs farther and farther up to go for a submission. And Calderwood kept chasing. She didn't disengage at one point at any time. She kind of just kept forcing herself into that position, and eventually she got armbarred. I think Calderwood just looked, I don't know, she looks really unathletic when she's out there. I mean, I don't mean that in to be mean, but she just looks kind of stiff, and I don't know. I feel like she's on a bit of a decline. And I think the fact that she had a title shot with Valentina and decided to fight anyways might be telling. Might tell you that she thinks she would lose to Valentina, or she doesn't really want that. And I don't think any girl at 125 can compete with Valentina. I think Maia doesn't have a chance in the slightest. So yeah, overall 125 is just a little weird of a division because none of these girls are going to challenge Valentina. So it's all the number 1 contender fights don't mean all that much. So I mean, Calderwood could put together some wins. She could fight Lauren Murphy. She could fight all sorts of girls in the top 5, the top 10. It's just, is there ever going to be a 125er that can compete with Valentina? And until then, I'm not really that interested in the division.
Yeah. So do you think this is kind of, and maybe you said this without outright saying it, but is it time to say maybe Calderwood's not championship caliber? Or is it a Valentina thing? Or is it
I think Calderwood's not championship caliber. If you take Valentina out of the division, I don't think Calderwood would become champion against these top contender girls.
All right. So do you think Maia set herself up for a title fight with the win?
Yeah. Without a lot going on in that division, beating a number 3 contender who kind of had a title shot already. Yeah. And Valentina tweeted afterwards. She said, "See you soon, Jennifer Maia." She sent out that tweet right after.
There you go.
Yeah, I think they're going for it.
I like when people do that. I like when someone looks impressive and then they call them out. It seems like that. And if you're Valentina, I mean, you want to stay active, you want to get paid, especially if you think you're that much better, and all the guys like you and me that are out there that think that you're so much better in your division. Why not stay active? Why not keep, cashing checks and cracking necks and doing what you do? So, all right, I'm no more excited about this division than you are. So let's move on. All right, number 11, Vicente Luque defeated Randy Brown by KO via knee strikes in the second round. The big adjustment they were talking about on the fight was Luque with the calf kick under Brown's jab. Do you think that when you see something like that, that it's as simple as Brown's young, and if you're Luque, you can do this little thing that completely throws him off his game? What'd you see in the fight?
I saw Luque just with a perfect, simple game plan. Kick the legs until he gets scared of him, back him up, pin him to the cage, and then land power. And that's kind of what he did. He dropped him twice. He almost dropped him a third time when Brown grabbed onto the fence to save himself from landing on his butt. And then the knee at the end was just brutal. I mean, it was just a perfect game plan. Back him up with leg kicks. Don't let him work off his jab, and then knock him out. That's kind of what Luque's been doing. He just doesn't have to use that many tools. He kind of just marches in anyways to eat shots and throws his power. I think Brown is young. He has time to adjust, but if you're at that weight class, 6'3", with those skinny legs, you have to be a lot more aggressive than just standing there and leaving your leg out there to be kicked. I think a guy who also is similar stature, but up a few weight classes, has really skinny legs, John Jones, doesn't get leg kicked much because he fights so aggressively. And we kind of saw it. He's kind of declining, so maybe not now, but in his prime, he was fighting super aggressively. So people were saying, kick his legs, but he'd be all over you. Anyways, he's such a talented striker that he can negate it. I think Brown might need to adjust his stance, might need to move up a weight class, might need to tack on more muscle because those legs are really skinny. And at 170, those guys can fire off leg kicks really fast.
Yeah, I think the difference is John Jones is going to make you pay for trying to do stuff like that.
Yeah. And Brown doesn't quite have the power or the wrestling he doesn't have the offense to negate a leg kick.
There's things that Jones does that we've always kind of just attributed to him being an offensive aggressive fighter, and maybe not attributed them to being a preemptive strike for things that he doesn't do well or for openings that exist. For example, he has teep kicks, right? He kicks guys in the legs. He pretty much invented the strike to the knee and the kick to the thigh. I'm sure there's some purist out there that's going to tell me this guy was doing them first, but John Jones is the guy.
I think you're right. I think he kind of started with that front kick to the thigh.
But that negates calf kicking, right? So when I saw the fight last night, I was seeing Randy Brown get kicked in the leg, and I said, for me, my play is, because what Randy Brown was trying to do was, okay, if he's going to kick my leg, I'm going to jab faster. So my jab gets there before his kick does. Here's my problem with that thought is even if your jab gets there quicker, he could still follow through with his kick. Whereas if instead of throwing jabs, you throw straight leads, at least you're going to crack him and make him pay for doing that. He's going to have to eat your straight lead to throw his kick.
That's how guys adjust to leg kicks. They throw their power. It was like Petr Yan. When Jose Aldo started throwing the leg kick, he would crack him with the right. And that's how he made the adjustment because Aldo was landing big leg kicks. And then Yan made the adjustment, stepped through with his right, and started landing power. Jose respected it, and then kind of became a boxing match from then on.
And in fairness to that, what I like about what Yan did was that Yan switched stances in that fight, but then his power hand becomes his lead hand, which even still, if you're throwing your power hand as a jab, it's still more effective than throwing your non-power hand as a jab. So I like the adjustment. I was a little worried that he'd be able to do it the whole fight, but he did it most of the fight. So if you're Brown, I think, and maybe you could give me your thoughts on this, the point of you fighting a guy like Luque is that either, it's cliche and it's Kavanaugh's line, but either you win or you learn. And, on this one, he has a lot to take away from this fight. I think that if he's just saying, I'm not ready, or he needs to really watch this tape and I think that he'll grow leaps and bounds. What are your thoughts?
I think he has a lot to learn from that, and if he can make adjustments to negate leg kicks, I think he can still be a problem at the division. He's so long and so tall that he has to pose a threat for so many other guys. So I think if he can fill up that hole in his game, he can string some wins against top 15. He can, because Luque was 11 and he jumped up there. So I think his next fight should be telling. I think it should show us if he's adjusted and how he's going to learn from it.
Let's end on this. I can't figure out what the UFC wants to do with Vicente Luque. In the guy's last 14 fights, he's lost to two people, Stephen Thompson and Leon Edwards. What more do you want from the guy? He goes in there, gives you battles. I just don't know. I mean, listen, he's got splits. He had a split with Perry. The Barberina fight, although he finished it, was a good fight. It was like fight of the year kind of fight.
That was a brawl.
Yeah, but they continue to put him in there with like Nico Price and Randy Brown. It's like, shouldn't he be past these guys? Like, in a way, and I'm not saying this because they kind of look similar, but in a way, shouldn't he kind of be perceived as like Damian Maia, like a top 10 sort of guy that's fighting real dudes? Like, what's the holdup on pushing this guy?
He definitely should. I don't know. It just seems like the UFC is treating him as like an action fighter they're trying to book every few months, and he's always going to deliver. I don't know if many people view him as a legit prospect, a legit challenger rather, but he's legit. He's becoming more and more calculated. His game plans are getting more and more, I guess, well thought out. He's kind of putting together game plans, putting together full fights, being slower, not brawling as much. And I think, I don't know if he has top 5 potential, but he could certainly hang out in that top 10 and give a lot of these guys some really good fights. And I think they need to give him someone up in the rankings so he can earn some more respect.
I agree. I think he's one of those guys that is like in the same way of Damian Maia, who ends up being like an outside title shot contender, where, like you said, he may not be a guy that lives in the top 5, but he's definitely a guy that should live in the top 10 and occasionally goes on a little bit of a run and you're like, well, nobody else is really doing anything here. Let's put Luque in there and see what happens. Or someone falls out of a main event and you go, let's throw Luque in there and see if he can, shock the world. All right. So, yeah, I like the guy a lot moving forward. I love watching him fight. I hope we see him more. All right, let's move on to Bobby Green and Lando Vannata. They don't like each other. So if that guy lost in the promotion of this fight, they don't like each other. Bobby Green got the unanimous decision here, 30-26 and a couple of 30-27s. I'll let you talk about the fight, but I have one takeaway from this, which was Bobby Green is sort of this unrealized potential guy, which we think he's going to be better, and he never kind of delivers on it. I'm a serious proponent of, if you have a certain fighting style, you have a ceiling for that, unless you're like a generational athlete. And Bobby Green's fighting style, to me, hands around his hips and sort of putting his head out there to be hit. If you're not Roy Jones and you're not, some of these type of guys, that just doesn't work. But with that being said, I thought it was a good back and forth fight. It was fight of the night. It should have been fight of the night. I like that they were talking to each other. The thing that I'll take from this that I was most impressed with Bobby Green is I just felt like he spent the night making the right decision. Every time there was a decision to be made, and you and I talk about these professional fights where a guy's been in there for a while, goes in there and fights a professional fight. I just felt like even little stuff, like when, they went to the floor and Vannata had his head. He wasn't really doing a lot, but Green still switched over to the other side. And he was just making the right decision all night. That was my takeaway. What was yours?
Bobby Green looked incredible. I don't know if it's Lando Vannata declining because he has become less and less dynamic as his fights as he's gone through his fights, and a lot slower actually. Bobby Green just looked fast. His hands were fast. Like, his boxing was perfect. He did everything right. Any grappling exchanges, he dominated. He got in the right positions every time. In the clinch, he was in the right positions. And even with his face, sticking his face out, hands down, he was still leading and winning combinations. He didn't get tagged that much. And when he did, he kind of shaked it off, did his little dance, bounced against the fence. It was just impressive. He had that step. I think he had a step and elbow for that dropped Vannata. It was just uber impressive on the feet. I'd still like to see him fight. After his last fight, I think I booked him against Marco Madsen. I think I'd like to see that. I'd like to see him challenge some wrestlers because he does have underrated grappling. And yeah, I can't wait for Bobby Green's next fight. His post-fight interview was great. All around awesome performance, and especially that when Herb Dean raised his hand, he spit out the water like Triple H. So that was pretty cool.
You know, I say this now here and there because I want to be the guy that says it in case it happens. Bobby Green could be one of those guys that surprises you and ends up being Jorge Masvidal. He has a little bit of personality. He has enough skill to be like, you know, and now when we see Jorge Masvidal, everybody's like, no, you just can't come out of nowhere and become Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal came out of nowhere and became Jorge Masvidal. So I could see Bobby Green, you know, here's how I would like him to end his career. And if you think he has a championship run in him, let me know. I don't see that. But I think that he could be a guy that just ends his career in a way that sets himself up post-career. If that means he opens a gym or becomes a coach, but he goes on enough of a run and starts to figure the game out enough. We'll use a guy like maybe Yves Edwards as an example, where the end of his career springboards into the beginning of his post-career. Do you see that, or do you think that I'm missing the boat and he has a championship run in him?
I like that the Masvidal kind of comparison. Kind of like he's been there, done that. Flashy guy, great personality, incredible on the feet, and yeah, I think he could put a string of wins together, really dominant wins if he's booked right, and he could. I mean, maybe not I mean, obviously it's Masvidal. I mean, I don't think anyone can have that kind of run and reach that kind of stardom so fast. But Bobby Green could be one of those guys that's like a fan favorite by the end of his career, and get really popular.
Yeah, I agree. All right, this is the 80-20 rule, Cameron, where you do a podcast and 80% of the time is spent on 20% of the fighters. Now it's time to spend 20% of the time on 80% of the fighters. If there's anybody that sticks out to you towards the rest of this card, let me know. But we're going to run through this. Jonathan Martinez defeated Frankie Saenz by KO via knee strike. What'd you have here?
Yeah, I think both these guys are. I don't want to take. I hate talking about prelims of guys who are just like I don't think are that good. I don't think either of these guys are that good. I think Saenz is is very much not UFC caliber, like way below UFC caliber. And I think Martinez is kind of right on that cusp. I think both these guys just don't have the potential. Saenz obviously probably ending his career soon. He's 39. And Martinez looked good, but it's against a guy who probably belongs in like the LFA or something.
All right. Nate Maness defeated Johnny Munoz by unanimous decision. 29-27 is all over the place. What'd you have here?
Yeah. I think scorecards. I scored it the same way, but I could have seen it. I don't know. I scored it the same way, but I could have seen a draw. Right. That's what I meant to say. And Munoz looked good. I mean, Munoz's takedowns looked strong. He was lifting Maness, getting good position. But Maness kind of outlasted him. He was good on the feet, landed a takedown to seal a third. Not an overall exciting fight, but an impressive win in the debut.
Jamall Emmers defeated Vince Cachero by decision. What'd you have here?
Impressive performance of the prelims. Emmers looked really good. Emmers' striking it looks like it's leveled up a bit, and his takedowns were perfectly timed. Double legs, getting under and getting deep really quick, slipping punches. I'd like to see what's next for Emmers. And Cachero, he's normally a bantamweight, so up a weight class against such an athletic guy, so it's going to be tough. So I'm still excited to see Cachero eventually fight at his actual weight class. So yeah, I mean, these prelims overall weren't the most exciting. A lot of decisions, not a lot of action. But yeah, let's move on to the last one.
Yeah, Christopher Gutierrez defeated drew with Cody Durden. What'd you have in this one?
And this was the one where Durden had back control, had his back for the entire more than half of the first round, and they gave him a 10-8. I wouldn't have personally, just because it wasn't really close to being stopped. He didn't land much damage, but I guess the judges are going to do what the judges do. and I thought Gutierrez won because he looked so good in those second and third rounds. I'm excited for what's next for Gutierrez. I think he's definitely a good prospect at bantamweight with his kickboxing skills.
It's weird. On any given night kind of situation, I was at World Series of Fighting 28 when Chris Gutierrez defeated Timur Valiev. And you think you see Timur Valiev and he's, a much higher prospect than Gutierrez is. But it's just weird how these guys can kind of, have a great night, came back and lost. They rematched him a couple of fights later, and Valiev won. But it's like I have a picture in my mind of Gutierrez from that night because he looked so good that night. I'm with you. I see him exactly where he is moving forward, but it's one of those things where it's weird to shake. You get these weird thoughts of fighters because you see them in one instance, and it's kind of hard to move on past. All right, let's get to the fun stuff here towards the end. Who'd you have as like a star of the night?
I'd say this one's hard just because no one like really, really stuck out. I'd probably say Bobby Green or Brunson. Brunson kind of did shock the world kind of because he was such a massive underdog. But yeah, I'd say Bobby Green, especially just fight of the night, great performance, great interview afterwards. Overall, yeah, Bobby Green.
Yeah, on a night when a lot of people underperform, which we'll get to in a second, he is the guy who, like you said, he's the guy that did the most for himself, I think. Who are you most excited to see next?
Say Luque. I mean, he's always going to be, no matter what happens in his fight, he's going to be who I'm most excited to see next if he's on a card. But also Emmers and Bobby Green. I think Bobby Green can put together that run we were talking about.
I'll talk about who I'm most excited to see next, but I don't want to step on the next thing, which is who overperformed. So who do you think overperformed?
Jennifer Maia, for one. Jennifer Maia. And Jennifer Maia. I mean, Brunson. Brunson's hard to say because I don't know if he did overperform. I think he's just at that level, that he's just better than Shahbazyan. So yeah, I think Maia's the one who like clearly overperformed.
She's my most excited to see next, just because I want to know what this is. Is this this is the thing I think is most fascinating. We've talked about this before about the fight game. Is you really don't know if someone has grown by leaps and bounds, or if they're catching their opponent on a bad night. So is this a bad night for Joanne Calderwood, or just a night that tells me Jennifer Maia's on the come up? I do agree with you that I don't think she's on Shevchenko's level, but I am interested to see what she brings to the table next. Let's talk about underperforming and how that should affect, or how we should classify what we got from Shahbazyan. Should we look at that like he was in a fight he never should have been booked in? Or should we look at it like, hey, man, you're here, you head kicked Tavares, the expectations are here. Doesn't matter how old you are, doesn't matter whatever. You earned this. What are your thoughts on Shahbazyan in terms of underperforming?
It's hard to get a read on him just because he did look a little off in that fight. But I think he did underperform. I think he knew the hype was there. He kind of bought into the hype. He thought he was that good. He believed in his own abilities, and he just didn't have them. He didn't put together the performance. So I think he did underperform.
We talked earlier, and I meant to mention this during the fight discussion, but one time Brunson got him down, and he was just so flat on his back that I was like, one of two things are happening here. Either, like you said, he was tired, and he was using it as a chance to rest, or he just lacks that kind of activity from his back. Now, I don't want to put too much stock in being Ronda Rousey's training partner. You would think that if you're Ronda Rousey's training partner for all those years, you'd have some activity off your back. But, there's the male-female thing. I just don't know. He's in there with grown men now. And Paul Felder said that he's got his man body now. I don't know that he does quite yet. And I'm interested to see. I'm with you that he underperformed. I got to see a little more activity. There are guys, you take them down, they can't wait to get up. And I need to see more of that from him. If he's that, it was a bad sign. I'm hoping I can chalk it up to fatigue, but it was just a bad sign. All right, let's put a period on this card. It wasn't the most exciting that's ever happened, but there were some good nights. Some good fights. What'd you think? What's your lasting thought? Someday your grandson's on your knee and he asks you about fight night Brunson versus Shahbazyan, and you say, well, grandson, here's what I remember.
I don't know. This was about as forgettable as forgettable gets. I just gotta say that I was excited for the small cage again, but we didn't get that many finishes. Yeah, I mean, it was forgettable. There's not a whole lot to be said about this card. If Shahbazyan had won and won impressively, it would have been, oh, Edmen Shahbazyan breaking through to the top 10, his rise to the title shot. But with Brunson winning, it kind of just feels like it put like a kind of like dim the light of the whole card. I don't mean to take anything away from Brunson, but it seems like the star power of the card kind of lost. I mean, JoJo lost, and she was a little hyped up as the next challenger for flyweight belt, and she lost. Edmen, youngest champion, golden boy, lost. Just overall, not a good card. I mean, no, good card, but not one I'm going to remember, not one I'm going to talk about. These aren't fights that mean a whole lot.
And guys, listen, we could be wrong about this in the sense that someday retrospectively we could look back and go, man, that was the night Derek Brunson went on a run, or Green, or Luque, or Maia. But they got to show it to us. All we're saying is the promotion of this card, the way that it was leaning, what the UFC cared about, all of those people lost. So if you're getting me to watch this card for X, Y, and Z being Shahbazyan, Calderwood, and maybe even Lando Vannata, none of that came through. So that's where it seemed like, a little bit the air was let out of the balloon that the UFC had blown up, which is kind of what we're saying. There's certainly the seeds here for, some things to happen. Maia could be better than we think she is. Green or Brunson could go on a run. Luque could be a top 10
Years
guy.
down the line, though. Years down the line.
There's going to be a card that will be more memorable where they make their big splash. This wasn't their big splash.
And I think also Brunson didn't get a performance of the night bonus, which I thought he absolutely deserved. And he kind of tweeted out that's because he kind of derailed the hype train, and the UFC's a little upset with him.
Yeah, maybe. All right, guys, there you have it. Another Fight Night Picks recap shows in the books. Be sure and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Listen to us on Spotify. And you guys are definitely not shy in the YouTube comments, so keep them coming. Well, listen, if you got something from me or Cameron, we might get in there and hit you back. Don't be as emotionally hurt when we crack on you as you don't want us to be when you crack on us. So if you're going to come for the king, you better not miss. Listen to us again on Spotify and iTunes. We'll see you next week. Peace.